As told by Ralph Tomies, in The Handbook for Selfish, Dishonest, and Manipulative Wives, it says, right on the very first page, in bold, that the husband should be the last person to find out that his wife has decided to leave him. In my case, I'd say that was 100% true. I was still head over heels in love with that woman, and I was completely blindsided. My ex spent so much time preparing herself that I never really had a chance to catch up to her emotionally, and by the time we had the talk, I was totally disoriented. But that's ancient history now, and honestly, this story isn't about that. This story is about what you can do when, by pure chance, you're the first to find out that some poor guy's wife is about to blow up his life. My name is Ralph Tomies. Yes, that's my real name, not a pseudonym, and I design, configure, and manage security systems for homes and small businesses. I run my own operation with 2 full-time staff members, a couple of carefully selected engineering students from the local university who help out when needed, and a subcontracted commercial call center. The call center monitors alarms from client locations and notifies the owner, a private security firm, the police, and sometimes me, depending on what's happening and what the client has instructed us to do in each type of event. That I work in the upper tier of the market, so nearly everything we do these days involves cutting-edge equipment with remote monitoring and secure data storage, both locally and in the cloud. If this were one of those romantic stories, I'd probably lie to you right now about my incredibly muscular build, piercing blue eyes, and a mysterious past in special forces, which would mean that, if I wanted to, I could kill you blindfolded from 100 meters away with a single kangaroo leg kick. Yes, I'm Australian. So you'll just have to put up with the occasional burst of metric measurements and rough slang. Things happen. I am what I am. Anyway, what I look like has absolutely nothing to do with this story, so I'll just assume the role of the faceless narrator. Fair enough. Now then, I was carrying out one of my routine 6-month system functionality checks at the luxurious home of Sam and Sasha Fitzgerald. To avoid any awkwardness, I always send the homeowners a text and an email a week in advance, informing them that on a specific day, I'll be remotely checking their in-home cameras for scheduled maintenance. Despite this courtesy, you'd be surprised at some of the things I end up seeing during these checks. People doing drugs or running around naked. Fairly common. Sometimes they're even having sex. Once, I ran a check on a camera in the party room and, at precisely 11 in the morning on a weekday, discovered that the wide-angle surveillance camera had managed to capture an orgy involving 17 couples, 6 threesomes, and 1 girl with 5 men all at once, in a single frame. Unfortunately, they don't make cameras like that anymore. And yes, I'm talking about the camera, not the girl. That if you've got enough money, you don't have to look for her. She'll find you, and your wallet, of course. Yeah, I'm damn cynical. But I've got about 1.5 million good reasons to be E.so, back to the story. My first step was to run a system check on the controller. I reviewed all the maintenance and shutdown logs to make sure everything was functioning properly, then verified that all the cameras were in place and operational. You'd be surprised how many idiots out there put a potted plant or some decorative object right in front of a surveillance camera, and then act completely baffled when I tell them it's obstructing the view. You don't have to be poor to be a fool, that's for sure. At Sam and Sasha's place, I noticed that the system had gone through a full reset the day before, and the entire event history had been wiped. I quickly reviewed the saved footage. Their system used local storage on site, and everything seemed normal at first glance. So I simply marked it for follow-up and made a note to check it again the next week, hoping by then we'd have a full week of uninterrupted data. The next Friday, I logged back into the system, and saw that the history had been wiped again, this time on Thursday afternoon. That was actually pretty strange, because all the archived files were untouched. Normally, when people try to hide something, they just delete the specific clips they don't want anyone to see and call it a day. Since this was clearly an unusual case, I opened the files and went through them carefully. The first thing I noticed was that in the footage from the previous day, it appeared to be a bright, sunny day. That stood out, because in reality, it had been overcast and raining almost the entire day. That I spent a bit more time digging and discovered that, for the previous 3 Thursdays, they had a 6-week continuous storage cycle. The files were identical. Same weather. Sam and Sasha leaving the house at exactly the same time. And a courier delivering a peculiarly shaped package, again, at the exact same time. That at this point, I could have just called Sam, he was our contracted client, and asked if he knew what was going on, but the problem was this: if someone had gained access to their security system and was manipulating it, my job was to find out who and why. So, I reconfigured their system to perform a live backup to my secure off-site servers over the next 7 days and set a new reminder to check everything again the following Friday. What had started as a routine system check was now spiraling into a lot of unexpected work, but we take our clients' security very seriously. That Friday, I logged back into their system and saw that, once again, the data had been wiped, the files from Thursday had been replaced, once again, with the exact same ones as before. Identical. That was seriously odd. That I accessed the raw footage stored on my server and rewound back to the moment of the reset. That we always make sure that the security controller is in view of one of the cameras. And there, I saw Sasha accessing the system and making changes. Normally, that would be the end of it. If a client wants to tinker with their own system, they have every right to do so. But in this case, the account owner was Sam, and according to the official documentation, no one else was authorized to modify the system. So, I rewound further, to early Thursday morning, and reviewed the actual events of that day. Both Sam and Sasha left the house for work at their usual time. But Sasha returned around noon. Less than half an hour later, a man appeared at the front door, the same man Sasha would later refer to as Terry, and just moments after he stepped inside, the two of them were already tearing each other's clothes off. For the next hour and a half, they had energetic sex in various positions, in multiple rooms. Even when the cameras weren't on them, I could still hear them clearly. Sasha was definitely a screamer. Now, I'm not claiming to be the next Sherlock Holmes, but even I could figure out that this was the reason Sasha was wiping the surveillance footage. I had no idea what the current state of Sam and Sasha's relationship was, but I can't imagine too many men being thrilled to know some muscled stallion was driving their wife into oblivion. Without a condom. Of course, if Sam was fine with it, then there wouldn't be any need to delete the files in the first place. Honestly, I could have gathered enough footage from this house to make a half-decent amateur adult hidden camera movie, but obviously I wouldn't even consider it. Confidentiality is paramount in my business. Given how my own marriage fell apart, watching Sasha so brazenly cheat on her husband left a bad taste in my mouth. So I fast-forwarded through most of it. When they were finally done, they took a shower together, got dressed, and sat down to have coffee. And oddly enough, that's when the most shocking part happened. "Hey," Terry asked casually, "have you decided what you're going to do about Sammy?" Sasha nodded. "I'm going to give him an award ceremony next week," Sasha said. "I'll leave early with a headache, and my friend will slip a sleeping pill into his drink. She'll ask one of the guys to take him to a motel room so he can sleep it off, and then she'll invite a woman and film the two of them together. That should take care of the problem with our stupid prenuptial agreement." "I don't get how that works," said Terry. "I was damn sure she hadn't chosen him for his brains." "We have a weird prenup, 80-20, 50-50, or 20-80, Sasha replied. Terry just stared at her blankly. "If neither of us cheats and we get divorced, everything is split 50-50, Sasha explained in the tone you'd use with a preschooler. "But if one of us can prove the other cheated, the cheater only gets 20%. Including the house, we're worth a couple million right now. So if I can prove he cheated, I walk away with another 600 grand. I muttered under my breath as I kept watching and listening. That was it. Forget confidentiality. I was going to tell Sam what was going on. Ever since I divorced my wife, I have no tolerance for cheaters and manipulative witches. Damn, Terry said, clearly impressed. "So once you drop the papers on him, we can do this every day." "No, I'll have to wait a few more weeks," Sasha said. "I'm about to receive an inheritance of $360,000, and I have to time everything just right. To get it, I need to be happily married on my 25th birthday, which falls on the 18th of next month. Only then will I be eligible. Once the lawyers sign off, I'll transfer the money into an account he doesn't know about. And as soon as it clears, I'll divorce him. He'll never find out about it, so the inheritance won't be part of the settlement. What if he finds out about us? Terry asked. I'll know the moment he even begins to suspect, she said. I installed a listening app on his phone so I can hear everything he says and always know exactly where he is. If he starts getting suspicious, we'll just stop seeing each other until after my birthday. Terry looked visibly rattled by that. He has no idea about the inheritance, she went on, so I can always postpone it if I have to. If things get complicated, we'll come up with something else. But this plan should work. He's completely clueless. Terry tilted his head to the side, and Sasha let out a sigh. He really has no idea, she said, and Terry slowly nodded. But can't he see us on these cameras? Terry asked, gesturing toward the very one I was watching through, while arrogantly squeezing her breast. I almost ducked instinctively, then just smirked at my own stupidity. No, she replied smugly. I disabled his remote access to the cameras and replaced all the footage with you in it with clean recordings from the previous weeks. Smart, Terry said, grinning while staring at her chest. That if I had been there in person, I would have wiped that smug grin off his damn face. If there's one thing I hate as much as a cheating married woman, it's a man who knowingly pursues someone else's wife. Especially a brainless, muscle-bound parasite like Terry. Their conversation drifted to more mundane topics, and once the coffee was gone, Terry gave Sasha a quick kiss and a thorough fondle, then left, still smiling. She went straight to the system, deleted the footage from that day, and replaced it with the previous weeks. Then she left, too. I was in one hell of a bind. I wanted to warn Sam, but the moment I did, Sasha would hear about it and just change her plan. That I considered just sending him the real footage. He'd have all the proof he needed of her infidelity, and she'd have nothing on him. He'd walk away with 80% of their assets. But that would also mean she wouldn't get her inheritance, and if she didn't get it, neither would he. That I was so furious I wanted her to watch him get the majority of their assets, including most of her precious inheritance, and to know there was nothing she could do about it. Yeah. Suffer, you snake. Over the next few days, I spent hours thinking through the situation. No matter what I did, it would tip her off, and if she were tipped off, I'd have no chance of learning the rest of her plan. That a couple of days before Sam's so-called award ceremony, I finally decided what I was going to do, and it was, essentially, nothing. As far as I could tell, I had to let things play out exactly as she had planned. But I also needed to find a way to prove that her so-called evidence of infidelity was complete nonsense. Desperately hoping the police wouldn't show up at my door or land me on some list of potential sex offenders, I went online and started digging up as much information as I could about drink spiking with sleep aids. There wasn't much out there about spiking men's drinks, and I had no way of knowing what drug she was planning to use, but one thing seemed likely: Sam would end up extremely relaxed and drowsy. That meant there was a good chance he wouldn't be able to perform when they tried to stage the act. Of course, they wouldn't care about that. All they needed was for it to look like he was sleeping with a prostitute. Sam and Sasha arrived at the award ceremony together, dressed to the nines and looking, to the outside world, like the picture-perfect married couple. My invitation came as part of a last-minute corporate sponsorship deal, and I met up there with Barry, one of my part-time engineering students who had a few extra talents that might come in handy. Shortly after they arrived, Sasha and her friend Ruby excused themselves, saying they needed to use the restroom. Instead, they headed to the reception desk, where Ruby booked a room for the night, and Sasha paid for it in cash. Barry stood right behind them at the desk and booked a room directly across the hall. Just a few minutes later, Barry messaged me, and we got to work. That I asked him how he managed to get access to Ruby's room key, but he just smirked and shook his head. I guess we all have our secrets. He'd always told me he'd take care of that part. That we went in and quickly set up 4 miniature high-definition surveillance cameras, placing them where they'd be hard to spot. Once the setup was complete, we returned to our own room to test the feed. We powered up the laptop and saw that everything was perfectly visible, clear as day. With everything in place, I headed back to the event to mingle, as would be expected from a sponsor, while Barry stayed behind to monitor the cameras. Sasha remained at the ceremony, clapping dutifully, like a proper wife, while Sam's team received their award. Then, right on cue, that conniving woman excused herself and left for home in a taxi. Ruby stepped in almost immediately, bringing over 2 pints of beer and a whiskey. An hour and a half later, I watched on the camera feed as she slipped something into Sam's next glass. Sam was already pretty drunk, and whatever she slipped into his drink kicked in fast. Half an hour later, a guy named Nate and I were practically carrying Sam to the room, eyes glued to Ruby's tight little ass as she walked ahead of us. Hey, I can look, can't I? I wouldn't have touched that poisonous witch with a 10-foot pole, but damn, did she have a great ass. That we took off Sam's tuxedo and laid him on the bed in just his shirt and underwear. Ruby said she'd stick around for a bit to make sure he didn't throw up. Nate and I headed back toward the party, but I told him I was calling it a night. Once we stepped out of the elevator, we split up. As soon as he was gone, I doubled back to my room and slipped inside. There, sitting at the table, was a man in a police uniform, curiously watching the footage from our very much illegal hidden cameras. Well, he said. What do we have here? I almost peed myself laughing. It took me a full minute before I could even speak. Jesus, Barry, I gasped. When you said it was a real cop uniform, I didn't think it'd be this convincing. It looks absolutely legit. Barry grinned. It's almost real, he said. Except when I stand in the right place, everything starts going down fast. Can't keep the ladies waiting, I said with a laugh. One of the reasons I brought Barry in on this project was that he moonlights as a stripper, and he was the one who showed up in the police uniform. Nope, he agreed. They're usually in a real hurry to get on stage and start swinging the baton. No details, please, I said, pretending to cover my ears, and we sat down to watch the live feed and wait. She's been texting a bit, Barry told me, but no calls yet. Makes sense, I replied. If she called, Sam might hear her and get suspicious. For the next 40 minutes, nothing made any sense. Sam lay sprawled out on the bed while Ruby just sat there playing on her phone. Finally, there was a soft knock at Ruby's door. She got up and opened it. The girl who walked in was young and probably quite attractive under the layer of makeup, but she was also clearly stoned. She looked at Ruby, blinking. 50 extra for the chick, she said hopefully. Not me, Ruby replied. Him. She pointed at Sam. Oh. The girl looked disappointed. But I'll pay another 100 if I can get it on camera. The girl looked hopeful. Too little. 150, Ruby said. Money first. Ruby counted out some money and handed it to the girl. If he doesn't wake up, there's no refund, the girl said. Perfect, Ruby said. It just has to look, on camera, like he's taking you. One of those scenes, the deal scene. The prostitute stripped off her clothes and approached Sam. Back in our room, Barry stood up and checked his gear. That we were relying on alcohol and whatever drug they gave Sam to keep him from getting hard. But if he did get hard and it looked like he was actually going to sleep with the prostitute, Barry was to rush in, bang on the door dressed as a cop, and say there had been a noise complaint. Barry's built like a brick wall, and just the sight of him would be enough to blow their plan to pieces. That I had made up my mind, we couldn't allow actual sex to happen, because if it did, then Sam would have technically committed adultery, even under the influence. That we needed him to be completely innocent. The unfaithful woman pulled off Sam's underwear and spent a few minutes trying to stimulate him, but there was no response. Should I try oral? Ruby offered, but the girl just shook her head. It's not going to work, she said calmly. She then put Sam's underwear back on, climbed on top of him, and spent the next 5 minutes or so pretending to ride him like a performer in a staged scene. What's his name? She asked. Sam. Oh yes, she moaned theatrically. Take me, Sam. Give it to me. She may have been a professional, but she delivered quite a performance. She bounced so convincingly on top of Sam that his body shifted with her movements, and with his eyes closed, it gave the impression that he was simply lying there, enjoying the experience. Ruby moved around the room, capturing different angles while the girl continued her dramatic moaning, and the sound of movement filled the space. Finally, Ruby called it. That's enough, she said. I'm sure Sasha will get exactly what she wants out of this. The escort nodded, got off the bed, dressed quickly, and slipped out of the room without another word. Ruby looked around the room, satisfied, and smiled. "You have no idea how much this night is going to cost you," she said to the sleeping Sam, "but it'll be the most expensive night you've ever slept through." Giggling, she quickly tidied up and left the room. I waited 10 more minutes, then went in and retrieved our cameras. Sam was still snoring softly the entire time. When I got back to our room, Barry had already changed into regular clothes. I handed him the envelope with the agreed payment, and we both left, dropping 3 key cards into the early checkout slot, then went our separate ways. I kept monitoring things over the next 2 Thursdays, and Sasha seemed completely convinced that everything was going according to plan. Finally, I sealed the package and dropped it in the mail. My job was done. As told by Adrienne Leclerc. I've been involved in more divorces than I can count, and that's hardly surprising. After all, I'm a divorce attorney. This last case I handled felt depressingly familiar from the very beginning. Sam Fitzgerald was referred to me by a colleague who specializes in commercial law. Sam's company is one of his clients. Sam's wife, Sasha, had decided she wanted a divorce. Sam was completely blindsided. He genuinely believed everything between them was fine. That he came to see me still in shock, and so in love that he was practically ready to roll over and give her whatever she wanted. I've lost track of how many clients have come to me saying things like, "If it means that much to her, just let her have it." Then her attorney requested a meeting to confirm the terms of their prenuptial agreement. They wanted both parties to come to a settlement before filing anything with the court. That raised a red flag for Sam, and when he showed me the document, I was confused as well. Sam swore up and down that he had never cheated on his wife, and the prenup only mattered if one of them had been unfaithful. She clearly wasn't going to admit anything voluntarily if that were the case, so the only possibility was that she planned to accuse him of infidelity. All we could do now was wait and see what her legal team would present. The entire situation shifted when the package arrived. It was addressed to me, referenced Sam Fitzgerald, and was marked confidential. Among other things, the cover letter stated that Sam's wife had been listening in on his phone conversations and that anything we discussed could reach her. Because of that, I decided to hold on to the materials and use them at the right moment. The contents of the package stunned me, and everything I was able to do to verify its authenticity checked out. I believed what was in that message 100%. Sam and Sasha arrived at the meeting completely unprepared for what was about to happen. On the other hand, I had everything I believed was necessary to secure a favorable outcome for my client. Sam and I met with Sasha and Miles Boone in the conference room at Boone & Fresh. The firm is well known and respected in the field. If what I expected was about to unfold, I also expected that Miles would be extremely uncomfortable by the end of the meeting. Sam sat quietly at the table, staring at Sasha, clearly confused and saying nothing. Sasha, for her part, avoided eye contact and acted as if she were trying to pretend he wasn't even in the room. "What claims are you bringing?" I asked after some brief formalities. "Your client had sex with another woman," Miles said. "No," Sam whispered almost inaudibly. "Evidence?" I asked. Miles nodded, then activated the large screen in the room. He opened a file on his laptop, and there it was. Sam was lying on a bed with his eyes closed, while a naked woman straddled him, loudly demanding that he sleep with her. It looked convincing. Sam stared at the screen in shock, mumbling incoherently. "Fabricated," I said simply when the video ended. There was no evidence of penetration. "The Clinton defense?" Miles asked with irony. "Will the judge believe what he sees, or what he doesn't see?" I smiled, nodded, and reached out for the laptop. Miles handed it over. I connected my drive and quickly launched the application. My video showed the same scene from multiple angles, and it was immediately clear that Sam had been unconscious during the entire event, and that he was wearing underwear, making penetration physically impossible. It ended with Ruby's words. "That's enough. I'm sure Sasha will get what she wants out of this." By the end of the footage, Sasha was pale as a sheet, and the first crack in Sam's loyalty to her appeared. "Bitch," he muttered quietly. "Sexual assault and fraud," I said calmly. "Is this real?" Miles asked nervously. "If it's not," I replied, "then neither is yours. They match exactly. Is this even legal?" The answer is the same. Excuse us, Miles said, and he practically dragged Sasha out of the room. They returned a couple of minutes later. Our claim is withdrawn, Miles said. Sasha was now avoiding eye contact with me as well. Shall we move on to the division of assets? He asked, but I simply shook my head and pressed play on the next video. What the hell? Sasha screamed as footage played of her and Terry having sex on the couch. That's private. You must have broken into our house to get that. Miles looked at me with hopeful eyes. You cheating bitch, Sam said a little louder now, his shoulders squaring. Where did this come from? Miles asked me. Sam is the only one who signed the contract for the installation of the surveillance system, and we have proof Sasha was aware of its presence. Excuse us, Miles said again, and he and Sasha stepped out of the room once more. Where did you? Sam began to ask, but I cut him off. Later, I said, pointing to his phone and mouthing the word, bugged. Jesus, Sam had no words. He just sat there, breathing heavily, trying to compose himself. Then we heard Sasha's shrill scream from the next room. Sam looked at me. Thank you, Sam said, and I smiled. This isn't over yet. Miles and Sasha returned. My client agrees to 20%, provided the recording is not used for prosecution. Miles said that. I looked at Sam and raised an eyebrow. He looked at Sasha, who was bright red and staring down at the floor. No deal, he said. She moves out starting today. I'll have her things sent to any local address she provides. I smiled. At last, I had a client who was taking charge. I nodded to Miles. He glanced at Sasha, who gave a barely noticeable nod. Agreed. Miles slid a sheet of paper toward me, a list of their shared assets. Do you agree with the list of assets? He asked hopefully. Where's the inheritance she received after she turned 25? I asked. Sasha screamed, jumped up, and ran out of the room. Miles stood to follow her, but turned and looked back at me. I assume inheritance isn't subject to division in this case, he said. Is the house on the list? Sam asked. Yes, I replied. I inherited it from my grandmother. I took out a pen and crossed the house off the list of assets. Miles shook his head sadly. I had no idea, he told me. I know. I assured him that he left to find Sasha, and I stood up and returned to my office. Sam turned off his phone and left it in another room before joining me. How the hell did you get all of this? He asked, in awe. I simply smiled and handed him the letter that had been enclosed in the package. It read, Dear Sam, you don't know me, and I don't know you. I stumbled across your wife's devious plan and simply couldn't let it happen, because I've been that guy, and I know what that kind of pain feels like. I couldn't tell you anything directly, because your phone is being monitored. And the moment she suspects you're on to her, she'll change her plan, and we'll lose the advantage that I was fortunate enough to be able to put together some protection for you, and I sent it all to your attorney to be used when the time was right. I hope it helped. There were some costs involved, but I'm proud to cover them, knowing I did the right thing. All I ask of you is to treat this as paying it forward. So if you ever find out that some poor guy is about to get framed by his wife, don't let him face it alone. Support him however you can, and do everything in your power to stop it from happening. Who knows? Maybe we could start a movement for change, the brotherhood, from a brother who still cares. Sam set the letter down and looked at me with grim determination. I can do that, he said. Thank you for being with us. And if you're one of those who watches silently, just leave a like. It helps new stories come to light.